Hey everybody, welcome and thank you for joining me today. It's really good to have you back again. So, all right, moving on with a little more, talk about some music. Today we're going to talk about a musical device that has really found its way into just about all the different forms of media that you may listen to or watch or enjoy for entertainment. And that's something called a leitmotif. Now, if you've never heard of this term at all, we're going to explore it a little bit today. Now, a leitmotif is a recurring musical phrase, like a little short segment of music, something you could hum, that is associated with a character, a theme, or something. It's attached to something else. This is obviously not the same as, say, when you listen to a song on the radio that is just for pure entertainment. Sometimes you may get a little tune stuck in your head and you're humming it, but it doesn't necessarily refer to a particular character or anything, right? It's just a little part of the song on the radio. But let's think about some movies, right? And in different movies or maybe video games, even sometimes on different radio shows or podcasts, we'll actually hear, especially on things like cartoons or anime, you may have a particular sound that kind of comes around every time that a particular character is going to show up. Or if you hear a sound as a reference to a particular character or a place or a crew of something. So that's what a leitmotif is. And we're going to take a look at it today. And so a leitmotif really comes around from the 1800s. In the late 1800s, there was a German composer by the name of Richard Wagner, spelled Wagner. Richard Wagner was really well known for his opera music. And whenever you have an opera, think about it this way: it's like a stage play if you've ever seen a musical. But before the days of musicals as we know it, there was things called opera. They were a big deal. It had all the different forms of art involved in one gigantic performance. You had costume making, you had paintings for the background, so all the artists would make the sets. You would also have actors and actresses, of course, on the stage, but they couldn't just act alone. Sometimes they may have to be able to dance. And of course, most importantly with opera, you would sing almost all of the words, or is what they call it in opera, a libretto, all basically the words that would be said during a play, but you'd be singing them. Now, in opera, you have particular characters and then different things that would happen. Now, to keep the audience engaged, this is before the days of movies, this is before the days of like Broadway style plays. You would have a particular sound associated with a particular character. Or if you're dealing with magic or murder, maybe you'll have a particular sound that is associated with like a good thing or a bad thing happening. Pretty common to hear. And of course, when we got into the 20th century and things like the camera, the motion picture camera became involved, we really started to see these leitmotifs start to make their way into modern media as well. And so Richard Wagner in his operas was just like the king, the father of the leitmotif. He really made it so usable that a lot of other people started to copy him. He would have a particular short sound phrase that would match different characters or different settings. And he would bring those back throughout these operas. And these operas were long. I mean, these are much longer than most modern motion picture movies. They were, sometimes up to 3 or 4 hours long. But let's skip ahead to today. So, we've come a long way since the days of Wagner, and we now have a lot of modern movies that use it. Think about if you ever watched the Harry Potter films. There's that bum ba dum bum 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 ba dum bum bum bum, the Hedwig thing, right? When you hear that, you know it's going to have something to do with Harry Potter, right? And there's a number of different leitmotifs in the Harry Potter series. If you've ever seen The Lord of the Rings, or if you've ever read those books, if you've not checked out those very famous fantasy novels and movies, there's a lot of leitmotif usage in there. And perhaps the best example, and the reason I say best is not because of the quality, but because so many people know it, is the Star Wars series. When George Lucas commissioned the music for the Star Wars series from the famous John Williams, he asked John to make songs for different characters and different things that would happen in the story. So, for example, if you've ever seen Star Wars, maybe even if you haven't seen Star Wars, it's pretty easy to recognize a few of them. So, for example, let's think of the big characters in the Star Wars franchise, right? We have Luke Skywalker, we have Darth Vader. We'll just start with those, right? Darth Vader had, of course, the very famous Imperial theme march. Bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum ba-dum. I'm sure we've all heard that, even if you've never watched those movies anyways. When you heard that, you usually knew bad guys are coming up or Darth Vader's here. it just that music was meant to attach itself to that character. When you hear that music, you think of that character, or you know actually see that character in your mind's eye. Same thing with Luke, right? Luke was a budding Jedi, right? He was learning this about this thing called the Force. Now, of course, if you're not into Star Wars and you're like, what is this guy talking about? It's basically like a supernatural magic sort of thing, basically, how they look at it in Star Wars saga. And whenever you would start to have these moments where Luke was interacting with the Force, they had a little leitmotif for that. The bum 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 ba ba dum bum 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 ba 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 bum. Not a perfect singing job, of course. I'm not a vocalist, but you get the idea here. These are examples of leitmotifs. And I want you guys to take a look at it next time you're watching movies. Not every movie has them. Sometimes it really depends on the type of movie that you're watching. A lot of, especially dramas, won't have leitmotifs. But keep an ear out for them, especially if something's got good music. When you play video games, sometimes, let's say you played the Uncharted video games. When you're coming up on the bad guys, you may start to hear a sound. It kind of lets you know, okay, you're getting close to the bad guys. So you know, do something. So you check that out when you start playing these video games and you start watching movies. Check that out. Now I've got two videos over here I want you guys to check out. One of these explains leitmotifs with a lot of examples better than I can sit here singing to you. So check that video out. And the last video I put on here today is really focused on the Star Wars saga, but it goes through the different leitmotifs that show up. And there's so many of them. And even if you're a full-on Star Wars fan, you may think you're an expert, and you may still be surprised at some of the stuff that was in there. Because I always thought I knew a lot about Star Wars and music, and I was still like, oh man, I never noticed that one. So please check these out, especially the second video, the third video. Check it out if you still want a little more clarification, but definitely watch the second video as well. There are some questions over here on the Padlet. Make sure you guys answer them. This is how I grade you each week. These ones are pretty straightforward. They're not as tricky as last week's ear training, so please give this a chance. All right, so guys, that's it for today, really. Check out this video on leitmotifs. And if you have any other questions that I didn't, clarify enough this week, please feel free to leave them in your Padlet questions, and I will try to address them next week or the week after. That's it for today, guys. All right, check out the next video. Check out the Padlet questions, and I'll see you guys next